If you're looking for a place to hang out, figure out where you can take the next step in your dairy farming business, then you're in the right spot. Welcome to the High Performance Herd podcast. Here we will inform you what you can do today to future-proof your business for tomorrow. A big thanks to our sponsors Fonterra, IDEXX, Kuru Diagnostics, TasHerd, Tasmanian Dairy Trust, Zoetis, NHIA, Datamars. I'm your host, Andrew Savage. Enjoy this episode of the High Performance Herd podcast wherever you may be listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and jump on our Facebook group, the High Performance Herd Project. Today we have Victor Moffroid into the High Performance Herd studio. Victor is the Category Manager, Livestock, Dairy and Poultry, Australia and New Zealand with IDEXX, manufacturers of the Laboratories milk pregnancy test and many other animal health products. With mating just about to kick off here in Australia and New Zealand, we thought it timely to talk about IDEXX, and in particular, what should we be looking at this time of year. Hi Victor, and welcome to the High Performance Herd podcast. Tell us something that most people don't know about you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the podcast. It's great to be here. I guess the first thing that no one knows about me, based on the fact that I don't have the accent, is that I was actually born in Belgium. And we came to Australia in 2000, so I actually speak French at home.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so and I heard you talking to your dog earlier, and there might have been some French going on there as well. Is that right? Does he go by
yeah, absolutely. My dogs are bilingual.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's correct.
And it's great. There's so many Europeans that have come across and contributed so much to the dairy industry in New Zealand and Australia. So I'm sure you're more than welcome and more fitting over in this part of the hemisphere. Now tell us about IDEXX. Who is IDEXX and what problems are you solving for dairy farmers?
Absolutely. So IDEXX is actually the global leaders in veterinary diagnostics. We have over 10,000 employees around the world. The thing is, IDEXX is not well known at the farm level because we operate in the back. We work with laboratories all around the world, and so a lot of farmers don't know the name IDEXX just yet. But you would have already used IDEXX tests. So IDEXX is actually broken into three different categories. We have the companion animal space, which is the small animal like cats and dogs, diagnostics and technology that help vets bring animals to a greater health, greater awareness of diseases, and help them live fuller lives. We also have the water category. Now, the water category is actually our diagnostics tests that provide safe drinking water around the world. And we actually have 2.5 billion people worldwide that rely on IDEXX tests for clean drinking water. But the thing we're going to talk about today is livestock, poultry, and dairy. We've sold over 1.7 billion tests. We focus on the animal welfare of herds all around the world to improve profitability and sustainability to the farm. In LPD, so livestock, poultry, dairy, we focus on infectious disease tests, sample-based pregnancy tests that are done on milk and blood, and antibiotic residue tests. And that's done through milk processors like in Australia, like Bega and Saputo, etc. Now, we also have state-of-the-art reference laboratories in Brisbane and Hamilton that are able to do a large amount of diagnostic testing. And in Australia, for example, we do a large amount of the live export protocol testing for infectious diseases. We also have on-farm tests. So we have a new Alerties on-farm pregnancy test that we're going to talk about, which is a cow-side pregnancy test. We have a BVD point-of-care test. So that's a cow-side PI test, which is very, very important for control of BVD. And then we have that milk antibiotic residue test that allows us to identify whether or not we have residue of antibiotics in the milk before the trucks come to pick up the milk, essentially.
Well, isn't that a massive company, 10,000 employees and all around the world, and huge resources that you can pull from, I'm sure. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about those tests, those new tests, and those ones that apply to dairy farmers, the on-farm one in particular, and the milk pregnancy test, which is pretty tried and true now. So with that in mind, and calving has just basically finished for a majority of farmers here in New Zealand and Tasmania, what are farmers or what should farmers be doing right now to set up for a successful joining?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, to have a successful joining, we need to make sure that we have, especially no infectious disease present that could impact fertility. Now, the biggest one prior to joining to make sure that these young heifers coming through are not going to be impacted is BVD or Pestiviruis. So we need to have a clear understanding of your status of BVD on your property. Because what happens is, if you have a persistently infected animal running around and there's a naive group of heifers that are coming through, if they get infected when they're pregnant with a calf, they either risk losing that calf or they risk actually producing more persistently infected animals. Now, a persistently infected animal is produced when that calf is in the womb, the heifer or the mother gets a BVD infection, and that calf's immune system is not developed well enough to actually recognize that virus as not itself, as something bad. So it identifies that virus and goes, oh, this must be part of me. And so it never, ever in its whole life it mounts an immune response to it because it thinks it's a part of its own system. And the problem with that is the PIs are responsible for causing havoc all around the farm. We know this BVD is the biggest problematic disease around the world. It's the most costly. And so we need to be able to make sure that we know our status for BVD. Do we have a PI on the farm? Is there a risk of these heifers getting infected and having embryo loss or producing more PIs? So what do we do? And how does herd recording labs fit into this picture? Well, we can do a bulk milk antibody test. Now, the bulk milk antibody test, which is done through the herd recording labs when the milk is picked up, is our warning light. Do we have BVD or not? If there's antibody present in the milking herd, it means there's BVD present, or it means these cows have come across BVD. So, if that's the case, and there's a high positive antibody response, well, it means there's a PI running around somewhere, which means there's a risk. So what do you need to do then? Make sure that you identify through further testing, where is that PI? Because if those heifers are naive and they do come across that PI, you could lose some serious money and lose some serious fertility. So what I would suggest to farmers right now is prior to mating is identify whether or not you have a BVD problem on your farm. Start with the milkers, start with the bulk milk antibody test, and then work your way through. It's important, though, that when you are doing these tests, is work with your vets, work with TasHerd, and identify how you can go about creating a plan to minimize the impact of BVD. What's a plan for control? Because, it is a complex disease. Without the right guidance from your vet, it's going to be hard for you guys to be able to effectively manage and control that disease. But that is probably, for me, the most important thing to do right now is not have BVD around naive cattle.
That's really great advice, and it really highlights the importance of analysing that bulk milk sample. It's a very simple process to go through. It's pretty easy to get a vet sample from the tanker. I think maybe farmers are slightly overwhelmed by some of the scientific jargon around this, but we've been through this process ourselves, haven't we? We went on a pesty PI hunt here, and all we did is add also the cows from the red herd as well. And it was a pretty step-by-step process just to get that bulk sample, find out there was a PI, and we sent those samples away for further analysis, the herd recording samples, and found that PI within the herd. And on that particular farm, we also found a PI within the calves because she had born a PI calf, and that was knocking those calves around. So it's such a powerful process and actually quite simple when you look at it. Really good advice. Thanks, Victor. And I guess while we're talking about mating, we're having great success now with the milk pregnancy test, and it's working very well in Tasmania, and it's very accurate and easy to use. Tell us about the Laboratories milk pregnancy test, and how does it work? How do you tell a cow is pregnant through a milk sample?
Yeah, so Laboratories pregnancy tests have been around for decades. Now, it's not a new technology, the milk pregnancy test is actually sold probably now over 40 million tests globally. We work with herd recording labs all around the world because the test is very accurate and it's so easy to do. So the way it works is the Laboratories pregnancy tests are what we call sample-based pregnancy tests. It's done, especially this one, on the milk. Now, the test works by identifying pregnancy-associated glycoproteins, or what we call PAGs. Now, PAGs are produced in the presence of a live embryo or fetus. It gets created in the placenta, and then it goes around in the system, in the milk, the blood, and it's a very accurate marker of pregnancy. We can detect those very, very accurately with over 99% accuracy as early as 28 days. So the beauty of this test for farmers is it offers an alternative for farmers to be able to pregnancy test with easier method. So you can do it through your herd recording lab. So when you are doing herd recording, you just tell TasHerd, hey, I want to add pregnancy to these cows, pregnancy testing that is. And TasHerd will do the pregnancy testing in the lab, and then you get a result. Pregnant, not pregnant, or in some cases, very small amount of cases, a recheck. Now, what that means is we've been able to quantify the level of these pregnancy proteins, and if it's too low to actually call it pregnant, and then a little bit too high to call it not pregnant, we recommend a recheck. And a lot of the time, what that means is that cow may have actually lost her calf. But why do farmers want to hear about the milk pregnancy test, and why is it so good for them? Well, like I said, it's easy to do. It minimizes workload for you guys. You don't have to lock up the cows again for when the vet comes through. It's extremely accurate as early as 28 days. So if you are interested in doing artificial programs and you want to give your heifers another chance of getting pregnant to that high quality semen, doing a 28-day pregnancy test allows you to resynchronize earlier and allows you to give potentially those heifers one more crack at that high quality semen instead of that cleanup bull. So, if we think as well with the increased awareness of animal welfare, there is no better test in the world from an animal welfare perspective. It's through the milk. It doesn't impact the cow at all. It doesn't hurt the cow at all. And, from what we see around the world is farmers are loving it purely for that reason. Workload advantages, animal welfare, accuracy, and it's done through your herd recording lab.
Yeah, you've raised some really good points. We could go down a huge rabbit hole and probably have a whole podcast on milk pregnancy testing. Maybe we do that down the track. There's some definite benefits I see. Herringbone, especially old herringbone dairies, where it's a real challenge to get those cows back in and get them pregnancy tested. They are just all over this like a rash, if I can say that. Also, you raised a good point around one of the, limiting beliefs for dairy farmers is that we can't age pregnancy. But if you've got really good AI records, you can use this test and go off the artificial insemination date. And you also talked about heifers and reintroducing them to a program. And I guess to add power to that, we can bring in tools like gestation length. We can use short gestation length straws, that type of thing, to actually pull those later calving animals back in. So it has a myriad of uses, and I can only see it growing. And when you say, I think you said 40 million tests or thereabouts, it is a lot. Yeah. And like you mentioned, also some of those.
Sorry, you go.
So you mentioned, just sometimes there, I guess, just to dispel some myths that farmers might say it's not accurate. I see it as if a cow is empty, she's empty. Some of those cows that have slipped may show slightly positive, which maybe then leads us to the on-farm test we're about to talk about. But the accuracy is really, really high now, and that is just a myth, basically, and maybe based on some earlier technologies.
Yeah, and look, the way the pregnancy protein works is, we can detect it accurately at day 28. Now, throughout pregnancy, that concentration of proteins will keep increasing. When the heifer or the cow gives birth, those proteins will take a bit of time to get out of the system, especially after birth, because there is a large quantity. But very early on, if we're doing 28-day testing or something, it will only remain in the system for 2 or 3 days. Now, that is a risk, but what we need to be able to think about is the test is very accurate. We know that this test is really like an open cow test. We want to be able to identify the open cows as early as possible to then resynchronize and get them back in calf, right? So, the beauty as well of having a test where we are able to quantify the amount of protein, like I mentioned here with the recheck. If that cow has lost her calf and there is that risk of still being proteins around in the system, by the time we'll do the test and we look at the concentration, most probably it's going to be in that recheck zone. And so by doing another test, we're going to be able to see that actually that cow did lose her calf. So that's the beauty of a quantifiable test. Now, something I forgot to mention as well is we did do a lot of work with a consultant in Australia, and one in Australia as well, a company, looking at the benefits of doing this test at pre-dry off. The costs of drying off an empty cow can be significant. Farmers are aware of it, we know that, but are we doing everything we can to minimize the likelihood of actually drying off an empty cow? Do you know for sure that she's pregnant? If the vet said that she's pregnant at day 40, how do you know that she's still pregnant when you're about to dry her off? So doing a pre-dry off test is an amazing tool to have better management of, accuracy of identifying pregnant, not pregnant when you're drying off. And we actually worked out that if you find just under 3% of those cows to be end up being open instead of pregnant, you've more than paid for all the tests for the whole herd. So just identifying 1 or 2 or 3 cows is already worth it. So, that's very important. We talk about the 28-day testing for improving AI programs, for getting more cows and calf to higher quality semen. But then a very important other tool is that pre-dry off test to make sure that when you are sending those cows away, they're definitely pregnant. You're not wasting money feeding. You're not wasting, time and efforts when you could have sold her and, she's taken up space and feed. So we don't want to be able to do that.
That's right. You've hit the nail on the head. And being biased from a herd testing point of view, we also use that pre-dry off milk sample for a selective dry cow strategy. And it makes it a really powerful piece of information to know that, yes, she is pregnant, and do I treat her with antibiotics pre-dry off, post-dry off treatment as well. So it's a no-brainer in my book. When we're talking about some of these rechecks, something we've talked about previously is the new Alerties on-farm pregnancy test through blood, and I've sold a few of these. I was talking to a farmer yesterday. He did a group of 30 beef heifers, said it was 100% accurate. All the empty cows he sent were empty, and so he's quite excited about that. Can you tell me about the Alerties on-farm pregnancy test, the blood one?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Alerties on-farm is very exciting. It's the first of its kind where farmers now have the power to be able to pregnancy test cows themselves. So it's a similar technology, except this test is actually done cow side. It's not done in a lab. And the way it works is it's very similar to a human test where you have 2 bars pregnant, 1 bar not pregnant. Now, we're all very familiar with the COVID rapid tests. You put something on one side of the test, it flows, and then you wait for the lines to appear. This is essentially what this test is. It's what we call a lateral flow device. So the Alerties on farm pregnancy test is done on a sample of blood, and it's for cows only at the moment. So the way it works is you will take a blood sample from under the tail, you'll put it on this test, you then put a bit of that wash solution similar to the COVID test when you had to put in the solution for a couple of minutes. You put that solution in straight after the blood within 2 minutes, and then you wait. And that's all you need to do. And what happens is within that 20-minute mark, you're going to be able to identify even more accurately than the milk pregnancy test, whether or not that cow's pregnant or open. So you can do that as early as 28 days. And the sensitivity, so that the accuracy of being able to identify open cows is 99.7%. But why is this test so awesome? Because now when farmers, want to do earlier testing or, let's say 28-day testing, or they find 3-4 cows and they go, geez, something may have gone wrong here. They look like they may have lost a calf. Instead of having to wait to bring a vet out, and that can save some time and all that, you can go in your shed, grab a few of these tests, take a few blood samples, and within 20 minutes, you know for sure whether or not that cow's pregnant or open. So it gives power to farmers to be able to do it when they want. Okay, so where we see this this test fit really well in the market, we talk about the recheck with the milk pregnancy test. When you get that, instead of having to collect another milk sample and then send it off and wait a few days, you can actually just grab one of these loaded on-farm pregnancy tests, give it a week, retest that cow, and then boom, within 20 minutes, you can either send it off to the meatworks or, you know that she's pregnant and it's all good to go. So, that's one way to do it. The spot checking. So, if you suspect the cow's potentially lost a calf, boom, use one of these tests. Or, when we think about, where we've seen a huge amount of growth of this test in the market is for, farmers who are doing kind of AI testing or IVF, and they want to be able to retest early and then resynchronize that cow, that heifer, and give her another chance for that high quality semen. So it's very exciting because it is a very, very accurate test. And, we're seeing farmers love the fact that they can do it themselves.
You're right. It is exciting. It's just another great tool that farmers now have to make decisions. And when we talk about sustainability, every cow counts. One aspect I've seen it used also is, there's been a lot of farms change hands here, a lot of managers entering herds where they don't really know the pregnancy status of cows and they could be calving any old time. And, they've got 20 cows on the calving pad and it's kind of the last week of September and is she or isn't she, and they've been using this test to go, actually, those 3 cows, they're not actually pregnant and they're not going to calve anytime soon. So it is already proven its worth. So well done on that test. It's been great.
Yeah, and look, what's important for, and we all know this, is that cows have a tendency to lose their calf, okay? Especially heifers. We want every heifer to get pregnant and keep that calf, but in reality, we do have quite a high level of embryo loss. So, being able to do one extra pregnancy test, maybe midway through gestation or like we said, pre-dry off and all that, it's going to allow you to be more on top of identifying exactly who's pregnant and who's not. And with increased costs in farming and increased costs of everything around the world, feed is getting more expensive. You can't afford to be feeding an open cow for 40, 50 days without actually, doing another test and knowing, hold on, something's gone wrong here. So, I would encourage farmers to give it a try, have a go at this test. It's very easy to do. And, if it allows you to be more on top of your pregnancy program, then, go for it. I think it's a really great tool for them to use.
Yeah, that's great. And if farmers want to know more, we'll have a call to action at the end there where they can get in touch with either you or I. What I'm seeing from IDEXX is you're really, as a company, trying to take the stress out of dairy farming, which is what this project is all about, creating clarity around sustainability in our future. One thing that causes a lot of stress for farmers and processors alike is antibiotics in the milk. And I know that you have a solution for this as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. IDEXX. When I talked about who IDEXX is and what we do, we invest $100 million US, that is, a year in R&D, because we're so keen on producing that next technology, that next solution for farmers, for veterinarians, for everyone around the world. And one of these solutions, which has worked really, really well with milk processors around the world, is the antibiotic residue test that's done on the milk. So it's a very similar test to the alerters on farm. It's also one of these kind of cow-side devices. And essentially what we do in Australia, especially with the likes of Bega and Saputo, is when a truck driver comes to collect the milk, he will actually use one of these tests to identify whether or not there's still antibiotics residue in the milk. And, it's a great way to minimize that antibiotic residue going into, the milk and into the milk chain and then into us. So it's a really great thing that they're doing. But for farmers, they can actually use this test on farm. It's extremely easy to do. We've done multiple validations for decades to show that, it is the easiest test to do on the market. It's extremely accurate. And, it's another tool for them to get on top of antibiotic residue. So, for example, if you are, giving treatment to a cow and you want to bring her back into the milking herd and you're worried maybe the milk, is still infected and might go into the vat, you can test that individual cow and identify whether or not that milk still has antibiotic residue. Another great thing to do, and this is what especially they've done in Europe, where antibiotic residue is really a focus in the European industry, is farmers are regularly testing the vat prior to actually booking in the truck. So by doing that, they minimize the chance of actually coming up as positive when the milk processors collect the milk. Farmers are aware of the significant costs of infecting the trucks, and they realize that it's better to pay several dollars and keep on top of the antibiotic residue. Okay, so testing the vat, okay, there's nothing there. Cool, let me call the truck and let's get that milk picked up. And another way to actually do it is, there's farmers that are actually testing the vat when it's halfway full. Is it positive or is it negative? Because by doing when it's halfway full, they're avoiding having to actually throw all of the vat away when they test when it's actually 100% full. So if they're testing at 50% and it comes up positive, they've only wasted 50% of that milk. But if they test it when it's full, they have to throw out that whole vat. So, there's ways for farmers to utilize this test to make sure that, again, they're more informed about what's going on, about what's on their farm, in their milk and all that. So it's a really, really great tool. Very soon, we're also going to come out with a solution for mastitis testing. Now, this is going to be done on milk. It's a PCR. I think we're all quite familiar, again, with COVID about what a PCR test is. What's that going to do is it's going to be a bulk milk PCR test, all individual, and it's going to identify every single pathogen that can cause mastitis. So by identifying which one it is, we're going to be able to have a more accurate antibiotic for that pathogen instead of just getting a broad spectrum. So it's also going to allow us to actually reduce the level of antibiotics we actually put in these cows by being more informed of actually what's in that milk, what pathogen is actually causing this mastitis. So, IDEXX is, we look at IDEXX as an infectious disease test company. We look at the pregnancy test, but we're also very, very focused on that antimicrobial stewardship, which is really looking at reducing antibiotics in the milk and reducing mastitis, on dairy properties around the world.
That's really exciting stuff. Is there any timeline as to when that may be available for farmers?
Yeah, look, the plan is, hopefully the start of next year. There is a lot of work to be done to be able to launch this test. We need to be able to make sure that the labs are set up properly to be able to run this test. It is a very technical test, but once we're up and running, definitely, we want to be able to offer it to farmers all around Australia and New Zealand as well. We're going to be working with key laboratories, with key milk processors, and herd recording labs around Australia, because we want to make sure that it's easy for the farmers, and that's where herd recording labs I see is the best solution for making farmers' lives easy. You guys are already going to be there. You're already collecting the milk. You do it on a regular basis. It's perfect. We are so focused on creating, a partnership and a relationship between key laboratories, herd recording labs, farmers, us, to be able to make sure that everything we offer farmers is easy and, it's no stress for them. We provide the results, the milk samples are collected by you guys. And that's where we see the future of, diagnostics testing in the dairy industry.
That's great. And that's exactly why we partnered with IDEXX for the High Performance Herd Project. And it's around everyone is in the same boat here, trying to do what they can for farmers, sustainability, all of those things that are coming at dairy farmers at 1,000,000 miles an hour currently. You've offered a lot of value. There's a lot of takeaways here for farmers. What is one key takeaway that you think our listeners should come away with after this session?
Absolutely. Look, I think, what's important for farmers is diagnostics testing. Yes, it's an extra cost, but there's a reason why diagnostic testing, or, the likes of disease testing, is so important. BVD can cause so many problems for your farm, your pesty, that is. When I've seen farmers that haven't been on top of their testing, they don't really realize that something's going on. In 1 year, they have a 40% fertility drop. So get on top of your disease management, identify whether or not you have a problem, especially for that kind of pre-mating on your heifers. That's the most important. Identify your status. And then, from a pregnancy testing point of view, just have a go. What we've seen is that every farmer who's actually tried the milk pregnancy test is still using it because they realize how easy it is and how accurate it is. So, I would suggest to farmers, speak to Tas Herd, and even if you do 50 or 60 or 70 counts, just have a go and try it for yourself, and then make up your mind. It's such an amazing test. We see such value around every part of the world, and we want to make sure that every farmer has at least tried it once, and then make up your mind, because we're so positive the fact that you're going to have a great experience with it.
Yeah, that's great. So many different facets around sustainability, labour, so many tangible benefits for farmers that will actually help the bottom line. If people want to connect with IDEXX or yourself and learn more about the things we've talked about, I know you've got a pretty cool website you've developed. Where would they head to find out more about this stuff?
Absolutely. So the website that we created, it's called farmframeworks.com.au. And it's a website that's developed for farmers to be able to get all the information in one spot. I know how frustrating it can be to search through 10 different websites to get the full picture. So what this website is about is it's really identifying, what is the problem, why is it a problem, giving you guys a full story, and then, what is the solution? So on this website, what you're going to find is a lot of information on all the different pregnancy tests that we've talked about. It's got some great videos. It's got the accuracy. It's got how to do it. There's testimonials in there as well. We also have a BVD section, which talks about what is BVD, what is the PI, how to manage BVD. There's all the different tests that you can do. And so for a farmer who wants to know more and, who's potentially just vaccinating and going, I don't even know why I vaccinate. Well, go on this website, have a read. It's really simple. There's a lot of great information there. There's also information on those antibiotic residue tests. There's different ones. Why do we use it? How it works. So really, it's just a website for farmers to go to get everything in one go. So farmframeworks.com.au. Go to the website and have a play around with it. I think if you're wanting to know more about what we've talked today, that is definitely the best spot to go. If you want to have a chat to someone, speak to Andrew, and anyone in our team is always very open to have a chat to farmers and talk about a bit of a program for you guys if you're interested.
No, that's great. Farmframeworks.com.au. I'll throw that in the show notes as well, a link to that so farmers can jump on there. It was a really good idea. IDEXX being such a massive company, maybe dairy farmers don't want to see much about chickens or water drinking quality or kitty cats' kidney failure. So it was a fantastic idea that you've niched down and thrown all that in one place. I want to thank you so much for giving up your time today, Victor. It's been really informative. You've given us a lot to take away, and it's very much appreciated. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and we look very much forward to this Focus Farm project working out really well. So hopefully we'll be able to all see each other in person. But good luck with it.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Thanks for listening to the High Performance Herd podcast. Thanks to the sponsors, Fonterra, IDEXX, Koru Diagnostics, Tas Herd, the Tasmanian Dairy Trust, Zoetis, NHIA, Datamars. Feel free to subscribe and review the podcast. Share it with your friends. The more, the merrier. Jump on Facebook, search the High Performance Herd Project, and you're very welcome to join the High Performance Herd private Facebook group. If you want to see a video of this podcast, jump on YouTube or www.highperformanceherd.com, where you'll see a link to these sponsors for more information on the High Performance Herd Project, which is a real-life dairy farm, spring block calving right here in Tassie. Thanks very much. and we'll see you next week.